I'm James Sutton. This is Road to Recovery. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and today my guest is Cliff Wiggins, who is the first peer specialist hired by Health and Human Services to work for jail addiction services. Welcome, Cliff.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. I always tease him. I say he's like Obama. He's the first one, right? And hopefully not the last one, though, right?
Right.
So, Cliff, can you tell us your recovery story?
Well, let's see, James. My story is really simple, man. I used too much for too long and too hard. And I grew up in a home where my father wasn't there, man. My oldest brother and next to my oldest brother were like my idols. I looked up to them. And as far as I can remember back, I don't even remember my father. I remember my oldest brother was having a birthday party. And for some reason, my dad sent the neighborhood guys to go get him, and they brought him back, and he got a punishment. And that's the only thing I remember about my father, man. My oldest brother graduated from Grambling State College, cum laude, back when Doug Williams was a quarterback. My brother tutored Doug Williams and Carlos Pennywell. Both of them went professional. My next to the oldest brother was ASC certified mechanic, and I learned a lot from him. He was also a thief, so so my brothers, they rubbed off on me. I was a bookworm and a thief and a mechanic.
Oh, okay.
So I found out, through recovery that whatever I'm exposed to, usually I take on those qualities. And so back to my story, I followed my brothers, I followed them to elementary school. All the teachers that knew them knew me when I got there. And all the information that they got from the school, I got it. So when I got to the school, I knew most of the stuff, and they thought I was brilliant. I was smart. I was just exposed to the information. But that idea that I was smart stuck with me. And by the time I got to junior high school, it was the same thing. And when I got to high school, it was the same thing. Everybody knew me. They knew my brothers before me. And I was expected to do well, which I did until my first year of high school. I was all city, all state string bass player with the orchestra. When I got to high school, I was a lifeguard. I was almost Eagle Scout. When I got to high school, I was on my way to doing big things, so I thought. But I got introduced to marijuana my first year in high school, and I started sipping on alcoholic beverages with my buddies during the summer leading to high school. And by the time I got out of high school, I was a full-fledged alcoholic and drug seller, selling marijuana, anything else I could get my hand on. Not to mention I was my own best customer. And I don't even know how I got out of high school, man, but I got out. I think it was because I got all my classes moved to before lunch, and I didn't have to worry about being in school at lunch and after lunch. So I managed to make it out of high school. And before I graduated, we took a SAT test, and that test was sent to certain colleges. I had intended on going in the Navy, but one of those colleges, Bowie State, sent me a letter asking me to come to school for free. And I made a mistake and showed that letter to my mother. and she showed it to my grandmother. And between both of them, they talked me into going to college. I went to college and I played football for a year. I studied hard for a year. And I think it was about almost my fourth semester, they asked me not to come back. I forgot why I was there. I made a series of blunders and got kicked out. And I went back to Norfolk, Virginia, and went straight to jail. For the next I stayed in jail for like 10 months, almost a year. And I got out, they put me on probation for 3 years, and they gave me parole for 3 years. They ran a concurrent, and I stayed on probation for 7 years. All of that time, I didn't get in any trouble. But as soon as they let me off probation, I started making another series of blunders, and I was going back and forth to jail for the next 15 years. And during that time, let me back up. While I was at Bowie State College, I was introduced to heroin. So when I got back to Norfolk, my disease kept progressing. During that 7 years on probation, I managed to stay away from basically from drugs, but I was still drinking. And when they let me off probation, all hell broke loose. The first thing I did was get some drugs, and I was off to the races. For 28 years, I drank and drugged. And the first 15 I would say it was kind of fun. But the last 15 years were a nightmare that I could not wake up from. I lost my mind. I lost the ability to think for myself. Instead of being a promising student, I turned into a worthless bum. I couldn't make a living. I had so many problems, I didn't think I would ever solve them. I was living from hand to foot. I moved in with my father close to the end of my addiction. Like I said, my father left when I was a child. He went to New York, and he came back when I was near the end of my addiction. And I moved in with him, and I don't know. I thought I was getting better, but I don't know. I ended up living in a cardboard box around the corner from 2 blocks away from where my father stayed. I was staying in a cardboard box behind the store. I was ashamed to go home. I was ashamed of myself. I wanted to kill myself. And my youngest brother came and found me in Chesapeake, Virginia on Christmas Day. I was in a laundromat. I had been reduced. I moved out of the cardboard box into an abandonment down the street. And I had been staying there for a year. And my brother found me on Christmas Day in the laundromat, all the way in the back of the laundromat. I had $3, 3 beers, and 3 cigarettes. And he walked up on me. I had my head down Christmas morning and feeling sorry for myself, poor me. And he walked up and asked me, was I ready to change my life? Or so that's what I thought he said. I found out later he asked me, was I ready for a new way of life? But I thought he asked me, was I ready to change my life? Anyway, I was so embarrassed of myself. I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't even look up and look in his face. I just looked over at his shoes. And I said, it can't get much worse than this. And he told me to come on outside. He'd be waiting for me out front. And what seemed like 20 minutes, I sit there in that laundromat wondering if I could make it to spring. My birthday is the first day of spring, and I always have good luck around my birthday. I get a job, I get a girlfriend, I find some money, something happens. And so I was wondering if I could make it through the winter until spring. And I like to say I had a moment of clarity and something said, go get in the car, fool. And I decided I better go get in the car. So I went out and I got in the car with my brother, and he had his wife with him. And she said, now, mind you, it's December the 25th. It's cold as I don't know what. And as soon as I got in the car, she said, roll the window down. It's hot in here. And
Yeah, you hadn't had a shower in a long time.
yeah, that's why I was in the laundry. I was trying to take care of my personal hygiene. And she bust me out. And I almost got out the car, but something said, nah, you better stay in this car. So I stayed in the car, and my brother had this brilliant idea. He said, I'm going to go tell mom I'm carrying you to the rehab. And I looked at him, I'm like, I know I should have stayed in that laundromat, but I still didn't get out the car. So he carried me to my mother's house, and she asked me, was it true? And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm going to the rehab. I had my head down. I'm still ashamed of myself, because my sister-in-law just bust me out behind my smelling. I'm not smelling too good. Right. So I'm not feeling too good when I go see my mother. But she said, hold up for a minute. And she went in the back room and came out about 5 minutes later. And she gave me 2 crisp $20 bills and told me, put it in my pocket. So I looked at my brother. I said, come on, man, let's go. And I was trying to get out that door, and she stopped me. She said, hold up, give me a hug. So I gave her a hug, and I said my farewells, and I went and jumped in the car, and my brother had another brilliant idea. He's going to go tell my dad that he's going to carry me up to the rehab. And so my dad stayed in Chesapeake. My mom was in Virginia Beach. It was like 20 minutes apart, but they hadn't seen each other for like 20-something years. They had been separated since my youngest brother was like born, and he was 50-something back then. Make that 40-something back then. Yeah, so he carried me to my dad's house, and my dad said the same thing almost. Is it true you going to the rehab, Cliff? I said, yes, sir. Yeah, it's true. And he said, hold up for a minute. He went in the room and came out with his car keys. Follow me. He went over to the bank and he got 200 fresh dollars and he gave them to me. And I looked at my brother and I said, let's go, man. And my dad called me back and he said, hold it. Give me a hug. And I gave him a hug. And I forgot, after I hugged my mother, she told me, don't spend all that money in the same place. And after I hugged my dad and tried to get away from him, he said the same thing. Don't spend all that money in the same place. And I stopped and I looked, and I remember she said the same thing like 10 minutes ago, and I just brushed it off. And I went and jumped in the car, and I told my brother, there's a gas station up the street, pull over there. And he said, okay. I said, I needed some cigarettes. So he pulled over to the gas station, and I went in and I got a 12-pack of beer, a pack of cigarettes, came back and jumped in the car and cracked 2-3 beers right fast and killed them. And I said, make this right turn. And he looked at me and said, don't even try it, man. Don't even try it. He knew what I had in mind, because now I got $243. We came up to Maryland. I stayed with him for about, that was December the 25th, for about a month. I think it was January 23rd, I finally got in the Avery Road Treatment Center, and that's where my story took off. But before then, I was walking from my brother's house past Seneca High School up to the social services area where they had a store over near this little pool place that you pool. Yeah.
We're gonna have to take a break for for informational, and then we're gonna come pick back up where you left off telling your story, and then we'll get into your recovery story.
All right.
So this is James Sutton. We're on Road to Recovery. Today, my special guest is Cliff Wiggins, peer specialist for Health and Human Services, works with Jail Addiction Services, and we'll be right back.
Even though there is so much against us,
you will see me choose to protect myself and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
Because it's going to take all of us thinking about one another.
And even with my face covered, you will see me.
You will see me as a mother, a wife, a friend.
As an athlete who gave everything to the game I love.
As a father, leading by example.
As a sister.
An entertainer.
As a champion for my people.
You will see me finding a light in a dark time.
To unlock our creativity and push our craft.
You will see me demanding the space to tell the stories that matter.
As a man who knows that tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Join us in wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us together.
I'm James Sutton. We're back with Road to Recovery. My guest today, Cliff Wiggins, a peer specialist for Jail Addiction Services. And so now, Cliff, you were just telling us about how you got into recovery. You want to pick up where you left off before the commercial?
Yeah, I think I was at my brother's over in Germantown, Maryland. He brought me up to Maryland, December the 25th, 99. And from December the 25th until January the 8th, 2000, I walked from his house on Middlebrook Road, past Seneca High School, up to the social services area to the little liquor store, and I'd buy something to drink, and I'd walk back past Seneca High School down that hill, looking back up toward the school like I was back in Norfolk or something. And I think it was around January the 6th, 7th, or 8th. I'm not sure exactly, but I'll take one of those dates. I was walking past that school again with that beer in hand, looking back up that hill, and another moment of clarity came to me, and something said, "You going back to jail, fool." And I turned around and looked up that hill, and I said to myself, if the police was coming down that hill, they would have seen you before you saw them, and you would have gave yourself away with all that turning around looking stuff. And I'm not trying to go back to jail. And I threw that beer over on the side, and I haven't had a drink since. I got in Avery Road Treatment Center January 23rd.
So how much clean time do you have now?
Let me see. Today is March 30.
The 30th, yeah.
2021. That makes approximately 20 years that I have not had a drink or a drug.
Congratulations.
Thank you, James.
Now, how did you get to be a peer specialist? Where were you trained?
I was, I think had about 7 or 8 years in recovery. And one of my friends in recovery told me about a training, a new thing that was happening in the recovery world. It was called recovery coaching. And they were having a training in downtown Rockville. And he gave me the address, and he asked me if I didn't have anything to do, would I mind checking it out? And I was between jobs at the time, and I said, sure, I'm gonna go check it out. And I went over, and the training really impressed me. They reminded me of when I was in Avery Road, but they had a more of an educational twist on it than a recovery twist. And that's what started me off in the recovery coaching peer program.
Oh, okay. So now you're the first peer specialist to ever work for Health and Human Services at the jail, jail addiction services. So what, in first place, why would peers be useful in treating people with substance use disorder?
Well, the reason peers are useful is because we are uniquely qualified to help other people because of our experience with using. You know, as for me, I was never diagnosed with a mental health issue, but they taught us to self-diagnose over at Avery Road Treatment Center. And I have noticed that I've got some issues going on, you know, some things that I needed to take a look at. They call them not defense mechanisms, but defects of character.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what we call them in the 12th.
Yeah, so yeah. I have some defects of character, you know, that I had to get a look at. And they also said, if you spat it, you got it, you know. So when I see those defects in other people, I know that I need to work on myself, you know. So that's how I can be useful to another person, because I can spat that stuff in other people because I recognize it in me.
Okay. So how have the inmates responded to you? How long have you been working at the jail?
This makes about 3 years I've been at the jail.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. 2 years before, so 2 years was before COVID and 1 year during COVID. So before COVID, when we had groups and, you know, you were going through the whole jail and you were doing a lot, how did the inmates respond to you?
Well, I was also involved in mental health court down in Rockville, Maryland, at the courts. And inmates responded pretty well. You know, some of them, they kind of brushed me off. You know how it is. They just here for all change. They're not really interested in recovery. And, you know, I can feel that from them. But some of them, they listen to my story and they realize they're talking to somebody who knows where they're coming from. You know, I told a group one day that when I got to Maryland, I didn't have any keys. I was homeless. I was broke, busted, disgusted, and couldn't be trusted. And look at here. I got keys now, not only to my house and my mother's house, but to a car and to a safe and to a storage unit. And I also got these keys to the jail where I can walk around to any cell in this jail and talk to other people. The same jail they used to lock me up in. I got the keys today.
Hey,
and that seems to really impress them.
Yeah, I tell them the same thing. You know, I tell them the same thing. I'm up here and they really like the fact that I've been where they are, you know, and that makes them drop their defenses a lot. You're right. And what about since COVID? How has your job been in the jail? Because you've been working the whole time on the front line during COVID, even before testing. How's that been?
Well, it may seem kind of contradictory, but I think I'm having more success with the inmates in COVID than I was pre-COVID, because there was usually a group of inmates pre-COVID, but now that we're in COVID, they don't have the groups anymore. So I'm basically one-on-one with them, and I'm getting some in-depth conversations going with some of these guys. Some of them, they let me know that they're not interested, and some of them are very interested. And I've been able to develop a relationship with them based on that. So I think, there's a silver lining in this COVID thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I really wasn't on Zoom until COVID, and I met a lot of wonderful people through Zoom all over the world. And in terms of in the actual jail where we work, like you said, because there's no groups, the inmates really are locked down most of the time. So they're really isolated. They haven't talked to any other human beings a lot. They haven't talked to their families. So you are like a lifeline for them that you get to talk to them and let them know you have some genuine concern. And they're stressed out because they're worried about themselves and their families catching COVID. We're the only staff there other than the correctional officer. So you're like very important. The program would not be able to perform like it does today without you. My hat goes off to you.
Thank you.
So what else? Now, did you get trained? You started your training in Montgomery County, but you finished it in Baltimore, right?
I finished my training. I did all my training in Montgomery County.
Oh, you did? Okay. I thought you had told me that you had got trained in Baltimore, because now we have the training for recovery coaches in Montgomery County. We had stopped for a minute, but I'm glad that we do train recovery coaches like yourself that can work in hospitals, treatment centers, shelters, or wherever people with substance use disorder are and need help. We can train peers to do what you do. So we got about a few minutes left. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to share about your position as a peer specialist, what you have learned? How do you maintain, matter of fact, let me ask you this, how do you maintain your own recovery during COVID?
Well, way back when I first got out of Lawrence Court, I stayed in Lawrence Court for 35 days. Avery Road Treatment Center for 35 days. And they sent me from there to Lawrence Court Treatment Center, Lawrence Court Halfway House. My first day in Lawrence Court Halfway House, I was told that I could go look for a job because they were swamped. They had numerous people they had to do intake on. So I could, they could move me back some other time. And I left that Lawrence Court and I ended up on 355 Frederick Road, North Frederick Road in Gaithersburg, Maryland, at Montgomery Donuts. I had put in numerous applications. A lot of places didn't even take an application. They just told me, we're not hiring. And I ended up at Montgomery Donuts, and I was pissed. I was smoking mad, man. Nobody had offered me a job, not to mention the fact that I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have any references, and I hadn't been in Maryland for 4 or 5 months. But I deserved a job. And I was upset. We got 2 minutes
left, Cliff. We got 2 minutes left. You got to bring it to the
Put it, long story short, I was on my way to 7-Eleven to get a bottle of wine and a pack of cigarettes first day out of the rehab. And the bells on top of Grace Church rang, and I knew they had meetings in there. I had been there 5 years earlier with my brother, the same one who brought me to Maryland. And I went over to that meeting, and they said, learn and listen to learn. And I don't remember much else, but I left out of that meeting and I went back to Lawrence Court, and I stayed in the room all day thinking about what they said. And I haven't missed a meeting since.
Wow, that's great. So that's a great place to end a wonderful story of how you had gone all the way down to your bottom, and now you've come all the way back, and you're an inspiration for others. Your power of example that recovery works. And still going to the same meeting. So that's another testimony that if you stay with the basics, then you'll never have to come back to them because of relapse. You still go to the same meeting that you went to 20 years ago after leaving Lawrence Court.
That's right. We meet every morning, 7 a.m.
All right. So today I've had Cliff Wiggins, the first peer specialist hired by Health and Human Services to work with jail addiction services in Montgomery County. My name is James Sutton. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and we'll see you on the road to recovery.